Welcome back to another episode of 5 a.m. Theology. Chris, one of the most frequent questions we get, in fact, got one recently, is how do you get through some of the more tedious passages in Scripture, like ones we got to this week in the book of Exodus, where it goes into great detail about the building of the tabernacle and the offerings that were given by each of the tribes. And our answer to anyone who asks is always to say, remember, these passages show how orderly God is and that He's the one who commands exactly as He's to be worshiped. But, I was reading this year and I was thinking maybe the best way to get through them is to do a deep dive into them.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could pull out some of the extraordinary facts in these readings in Exodus this week. There was also some from Leviticus and Numbers in there too about the building of the tabernacle and answer the question, how was it even possible that they were able to accomplish building this?
That is a good question. Just Exodus 35, 4-9 elicits a lot of questions. I'll read it. Moses said to all the congregation of the people of Israel, "This is the thing that the Lord has commanded. Take from among you a contribution to the Lord. Whoever is of a generous heart, let him bring the Lord's contributions: gold, silver, and bronze, blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twisted linen, goat's hair, tanned ram's skins and goat skins, acacia wood, oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil and the fragrant incense, and onyx stones and stones for setting for the ephod and the breastpiece." That's the end of those verses. So how are this group of slaves able to build an elaborate yet portable tabernacle in the middle of the desert to the exact specifications that God gave them? What did they use to measure and cut these things? Where did they get the gold and the silver and the bronze, the fancy yarns, the fine linens, and all of the woods and the oils and the spices and those precious stones that are mentioned? And if we read on, we see that they are called to make intricate lampstands, bowls, plates, pitchers, and cups. Where did the people who had been slaves all their lives get the skill to mold these things? And how did Moses organize over 1.5 million people to do all this? Exodus 38, verse 36 tells us that there were 603,550 men over the age of 20. So just do the math. When you add women and everyone under 20, it would have definitely been about 1.5 million people or more.
Yeah,
That's a ton of people to rope in and get to do something.
it is. Gosh, just getting like 10 people to do something is enough.
I know.
Chris, the first question we should answer, where did all the materials come from? Well, if we go back to Exodus 12:35 to 36, a familiar verse, the people of Israel had also done as Moses told them, for they had asked the Egyptians for silver and gold and jewelry and for clothing. And the Lord had given the people favor in sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have what they asked. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And I think sometimes we read those verses and are like, okay, the Israelites knocked on the doors of the Egyptians and the Egyptians gave them donations. But that's not how it went down. The word plunder means to loot, to pillage, to rob, to maraud, to ransack. And it's usually used in the context of taking by force or stealing everything from a person, a house, a store, a town, a group of people. But here, God didn't just make the Egyptians lose their firstborn and their slave labor when the Israelites left. He had them plunder most of Egypt's riches. They took silver, gold, bronze, clothing, which was probably where the linen and the yarn came from, and jewels. I mean, we should think about this for a minute. The Israelites plundered or looted the Egyptians, but they didn't steal anything or use any force because God had the Egyptians willingly hand over all their riches. That just blows my mind. Like, I don't know how that worked.
I know. I wish we could do that with the Democrats who have stolen all of our stuff for so long.
Get all that USAID money back.
Yeah, I know. The Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians for 400 years. They were probably given very little food or clothing or other supplies that they might need. They didn't get paid. We see an example of a couple of them getting beaten in Exodus 2, verse 11. So God wasn't just freeing his people from their slavery, he was paying them back for all that they had suffered. They left Egypt rich because God had provided them with all that stuff. Everything we have is from God. And then, just as we're to give back a portion of what God has given to us, when God tells Moses to have anyone who is of a generous heart contribute the things that they'd gotten from Egypt, they end up with plenty to build a tabernacle and extra for each tribe to make offerings. How much did the people willingly give to build the tabernacle? Over 2,200 pounds of gold, over 7,500 pounds of silver, and over 5,300 pounds of bronze. That boggles my mind. Not to mention vast quantities of linen and yarn and spices and oils and precious gems.
Yeah, that's mind blowing. And then there's the animal skins that we read that was listed. Exodus 35:23 says, everyone who possessed blue or purple or scarlet yarns or fine linen or goat's hair or tanned ram skins or goat skins brought them. Now, the NASB adds leather in there too, which is made from cowhides. So, where did the animals come from? Where did they get the skins? Well, some came from their own herds, which they brought with them, and they killed them and they did sacrifices. So, they could have sacrificed them and taken their skins or just killed them for the skins and ate them. But they also could have sent hunting parties out to gather more. Now, they were in a desert, but it's most likely that the desert had forests in some areas around. But this really should blow our minds because the Israelites traveled 3 months, almost 300 miles from Egypt to Mount Sinai, where they initially built the tabernacle, lugging all that stuff with them, all those thousands of pounds of gold and silver and bronze that you said, Chris, and the animals they took with them, the oils, the spices, the linens, the yarns. They probably put them on carts that were pulled by oxen or donkeys. We think the people on the Oregon Trail had it hard. I mean, think about these guys.
I know. How about all of the wood that they needed? So we know the outside of this tabernacle was 45 by 15 by 15 feet. That would be like 48 wood boards to go around, plus more for the inner room, including the Holy of Holies. The tabernacle was mostly built from acacia wood. Acacia wood is dense and strong, and it was a common wood in the wilderness. So the Israelites would cut trees down and hand mill them and make it into usable wood. So where did they get the tools and the ability to mill the trees and build a tabernacle? During their 400 years of slavery, they would have been assigned things like building roads and clearing fields and planting crops. We know they were tending flocks and herds. We know that they probably cleaned houses and maybe even built some of the national treasures that Egypt was famous for and is still today. This would have given them building skills, and they probably brought with them the tools that they used for their work in Egypt, and who knows, maybe even more.
But that intricate work, like making the atoning cover for the Ark of the Covenant, which had two cherubim made out of hammered gold with their wings spread and facing each other, as we see in Exodus 25, they're commanded to make. There was also the lampstands. These were made out of gold. They had 6 branches. They had exact details of intricate flowers that they were to make, cups that were made to look like almond blossoms, and there were calyxes on them, which are kind of the leaf-looking things that protect the bottom of the flower buds. So this was all to be made from hammered gold. And as God said to Moses in Exodus 25:40, see that you make them after the pattern for them, which is being shown you on the mountain. They also had to make clasps and rings for the curtains in the tabernacle. Like you said, Chris, they had to make plates and bowls and pitchers and cups. Now, probably nothing in their slavery years would have prepared them for this. But God never calls us to anything that He doesn't equip us for. And this is always the part that blows my mind. Exodus 31:2-6. says, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, son of Hur of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, to work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed with him Aholiab, the son of Ahisamach of the tribe of Dan. And I have given to all able men ability that they may make all that I have commanded you."
Rose, that same part always blows my mind too. And then I think on top of it, he just told Moses, make sure these are all done according to what I've shown you on the mountain. So he's shown Moses on the mountain, and then he's given these guys the ability to do it.
Right.
It just blows your mind when you think about
And
it.
yeah, there was no here's some blueprints. They were stone tablets that Moses was taking notes on.
I can't I can't imagine seeing blueprints on a stone the whole thing is just so mind-blowing.
I
Just
think
so
we're getting dumbed down as time goes on.
well, yeah, we definitely are. I mean, if Adam and Eve were the smartest humans ever, which we think they were.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the building of the tabernacle was completed, each of the 12 tribes made an offering for the tabernacle. This can be another passage that seems tedious, but again, digging down might help us see just how amazing it truly is. Number 7 lists what the 12 tribes of Israel brought to present to the Lord. Each tribe brought exactly the same offering. Together, they brought 6 wagons with 12 oxen, but then each individual tribe also brought 1 silver plate whose weight was 130 shekels, 1 silver basin of 70 shekels, both of them full of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, 1 gold dish of 10 shekels full of incense, 1 bull from the herd, 1 ram, 1 male lamb a year old for a burnt offering, 1 male goat for a sin offering, and for the sacrifice of peace offerings, 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 male goats, and 5 male lambs a year old. Rose, how'd they all have those exact same things in their possession?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, really, it just blows my mind again.
Hmm.
And we shouldn't miss this detail of this. The tribe of Judah was the biggest tribe, while the tribe of Benjamin was the smallest, and yet each tribe brought the same offering. This is to emphasize that no matter the size, every one of the 12 tribes had equal standing before God. Regardless of their individual wealth or stature, no tribe was more important in the eyes of God, and all were to offer the same commitment to God.
And as a result of being the same in the eyes of God, the tribes were to have unity. They weren't 12 distinct people groups of God. They were all the people of God. They were just apportioned into 12 tribes to help Moses mostly handle them all, because then he put people in charge of the tribes and then in charge of families and clans and stuff. And that's how he was able to deal with over 1.5 million people. Each tribe was important, and each tribe had a part to play in the plans and the purposes of God. So, Chris, we ask ourselves now, well, what's the application of all this for us? Well, there's actually a lot. We could do a deep, deep dive, and we certainly don't have time to do that in this episode. For example, every single detail of the tabernacle has a symbolic foreshadowing of Christ. There's lots of applications here.
There is a ton. But one application that we're going to point out today is whatever God calls us to, He will equip us for. Even when we aren't sure what He's doing, we can trust that He's got a plan. We might not, but He does. God never told the Israelites why He wanted them to ask the Egyptians for their gold and their silver and anything else. He just told them to do it. And they trusted Him, and they obviously did. And then down the road, they saw the purpose in it. I'm sure when Moses first told the Israelites, especially Bezalel and Aholiab, what God wanted them to do, they were probably intimidated. But God gave them what they needed to complete the task that He put before them. God might not miraculously give us the skill to hammer out almond flowers from gold, but He will put us on the path to learn what we need to in order to accomplish what He puts before us. And the work he gives us to do has eternal implications. The tabernacle was not just a makeshift place of worship for the Israelites to use for the next year or even 40 years. The tabernacle that the Israelites built would be packed up and moved and then unpacked and set up several times over the next 400 years. That's the time when Solomon would eventually build the temple. Rose, can you imagine like just packing and unpacking anything like that over and over again? Usually puts wear and tear on it. But
Absolutely. Absolutely. And making sure you're not breaking stuff or
yeah.
breaking a flower off or something.
Oh, can you imagine?
The tabernacle was built to last. Like you said, Chris, I mean, all that packing and unpacking, it was built to last. Just as everything that God calls us to do is made to last. Our life on earth is temporal, but the things that we do for God are eternal.
And that's a good place to end today. Have a blessed morning, everybody.